In the summer of 1969, the city of Los Angeles was buzzing with excitement of Hollywood glamour and the rise of the counterculture movement. But beneath the surface of this cultural revolution, a sinister force was brewing. The force was Charles Manson, a manipulative and disturbed man who would soon be known as the leader of one of the most infamous cults in American history. Manson convinced his followers that he was a messiah, and together they would carry out series of brutal murders that would shock the world. The Manson family murders, as they came to be known, were not just the acts of a few deranged individuals, they were a reflection of Manson's terrifying influence. This is the story of Charles Manson, the man behind the madness, and how his dark influence led to one of the most chilling crime sprees in American history. Charles Manson was born in 1934 to a troubled family, and his life was marked by crime and instability from an early age. After spending much of his youth in and out of prison, Manson made his way to California in 1960s, just as the counterculture movement was taking a hold. He was charismatic, manipulative, and had a strange ability to attract people to him. It wasn't long before he began forming what he called his family. Manson's followers were young, impressionable, and searching for meaning in a chaotic world. Many of them came from middle-class families but had drifted into the counterculture in search of something more. Manson preyed on their vulnerabilities using a mix of charm, drugs, and apocalyptic teachings to gain their devotion. He convinced them that a race war, which he called Helter Skelter, was coming, and that they were destined to survive and thrive in its aftermath. The Manson family lived on a rundown ranch outside of Los Angeles, isolated from the rest of the world. Here, Manson's control over his followers grew stronger and his ideas darker. By 1969, Manson had become obsessed with bringing about the chaos he had been preaching. He believed that by committing murders, he could spark the race war he had foretold. On August 8, 1969, Manson sent four of his most loyal followers, Tex Watson, Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, and Linda Kasabian, to a home in Hollywood Hills. Manson chose this house specifically because it had once belonged to a music producer who had rejected him. But on this night, it was the home of actress Sharon Tate and her friends. Sharon Tate was a rising star in Hollywood, and she was 8 months pregnant with her first child. She had invited several friends over that night, including hairstylist Jay Sebring, writer Wojciech Frykowski, and Abigail Folger, the heiress to the Folger coffee fortune. The group had no idea of the horror that was about to unfold. The Manson family members entered the home and unleashed a terrifying wave of violence. Sharon Tate and her friends were brutally murdered in what seemed like a random act of unimaginable cruelty. Tate, despite begging for the life of her unborn child, was stabbed repeatedly. The word "pig" was scrawled on the front door in blood, a twisted sign left by Manson's followers. The next night, Manson wasn't satisfied. He ordered his followers to strike again, this time at the home of Lino and Rosemary LaBianca. The LaBiancas were a wealthy couple living in a quiet neighborhood. Manson personally entered their home, tying the couple up before leaving and sending his followers to finish the job. Like the night before, the murders were brutal, with messages like "Death to Biggs" and "Helter Skelter" written on the walls in blood. The randomness and savagery of the murders sent shockwaves through Los Angeles and the rest of the country. No one felt safe. It seemed like anyone could be next, and the police were desperate to catch whoever was responsible. The investigation into the murders led police down a winding road of dead ends. For months, the authorities struggled to piece together any clues, but it was a series of unrelated arrests that eventually led to the capture of the Manson family. In October 1969, members of the family were arrested for unrelated crimes including car theft and vandalism. During their time in jail, some of the followers began talking about the murders, and soon the police realized they had their killers. Charles Manson, along with several members of his family, was charged with the murders. The trial, which began in 1970, was one of the most sensationalized in American history. Manson, with his wide eyes and swastika carved in his forehead, played a role of unhinged mastermind. His followers, including Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, and Leslie Van Houten, remained devoted to him even as they confessed to their roles in the murders. Throughout the trial, Manson maintained that he had never personally killed anyone. Instead, he claimed that his followers had acted on their own, but the prosecution argued that Manson's influence and control over the family were so powerful that he was responsible for their actions. The jury agreed, and in 1971, Manson and several of his followers were convicted of murder and sentenced to death. Their sentences were later commuted to life in prison when California temporarily abolished the death penalty. Charles Manson's reign of terror may have lasted only a few months, but the fear he created has lasted for decades. Manson wasn't just a killer, he was a master manipulator who twisted the minds of his followers and unleashed chaos. His dark influence, combined with the senseless brutality of the murders, has kept his name alive in infamy. For the victims, the tragedy remains a painful memory. Sharon Tate, whose life and the life of her unborn child were taken in such a horrific way, has become a symbol of innocence lost. And for the world, the Manson family murders stand as a terrifying reminder of how easily people can be led down a path of evil when in the hands of a manipulative leader. Charles Manson died in prison in 2017, but the questions about how one man could hold such power over others continue to haunt us. His story is one of control, manipulation, and ultimately a chilling reminder of the darkness that can exist in the human soul.